through my 22 people in the weight room. Hold on, good people. Hold on. Okay, as you all are flooding in, we are about to get started. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you for coming through. So my name is Dr. Nadia Lopez, but Nadia is fine. I'm so grateful to be in this space, and I thank God for just putting the vision on myself in April. We came together one evening. We literally live 15 minutes away from each other and could not get it together. We could not find time to meet because we are both caregivers. And when we did sit down and talk, we were talking about, the battle that we're up against in terms of supporting our parents and how overwhelming it is, especially as we are trying to navigate our careers as entrepreneurs and then also being able to show up. And sometimes you're showing up for people who you deeply love, but then there's also a lot that comes with our parents in this stage and just things that have happened in general, right? And so there's a part of it that requires grace. It's a part of it that requires a lot of patience. And we were over it. And so we sat, we had a conversation, and we thought about, like, we definitely should think about creating a space for other caregivers because we knew that we weren't the only ones. And lo and behold, the next day I had been out with my dad, multitude of what is it, appointments, and then my mother had to crash out and I couldn't take it. So I was in my car and I was just like, where's the delegation? We need a group, right? And in that moment, people were sending me resources of folks I could speak to, people who are doing this work. And in doing that, April reached out to me immediately and was like, what can we get started? Because I know that, this is a sign. We just spoke about it yesterday. And so here we are. And I thank Asha for answering the call because she was one of the individuals who I reached out to and was like, what do you need from me, sis? That's my journey. And I want to be able to help. So I want to pass it off to April. But I just want to thank you all for, again, spending your time and just know that this is a space that we want to create this as a series to continuously bring resources, but just knowing that you're not alone. We weren't prepared. There wasn't the blueprint, but we are going to create something so that not only us as individuals get through it individually, but as a community, but those who are coming behind us who may have to endure the same things. April?
I just am going to echo everything you say. We only have an hour. So thank everyone who had the time to come and really felt it in their heart to be here. I know what this walk is like. I've been in it for a long time now, off and on, and now full time for some years. And it's been a journey. It's still a journey, but just having community. I'm a community builder and I like building blueprints. And this is a space where I know it's much needed. And I know Dr. Nadia Lopez and we've been sister friends for a long time. I know she's community centric as well. So we just both put our heads together. And honestly, this was God. This wasn't even us. So we're here and we want to just share the resources and thank you because I think just knowing you're not in a silo and alone and you can share and we will have more to share later. I'm just really excited too to be here with Asha and really talk to her. So thank you.
Okay, now with that said, we don't want to take up time reading her bio because she is fantastic and fabulous, but she does have a journey that led her to specifically supporting those who are in the caregiving space. So, Asha, please share with the good folks um, your journey into the caregiving space, but also the work that you're doing that we're going to further explore and then provide the resources to folks about.
All right. All right, everybody, welcome to this conversation. Thank you both, April and Nadia, for having me here. So to your point, I'm Asha Tarry Eastman. You guys can just call me Asha. I have been on the caregiving journey now for 12 years. And in different ways, I'm a 3-time caregiver. And so I've actually seen caregiving in several different fashions, up close and personal, long distance caregiving, intermittent caregiving. And I always say that no two caregiving journeys are exactly the same. In terms of what I do professionally, basically I help people to transform their lives and their mental well-being. And I've done that in a variety of fashions. I'm a third generation activist. I'm also a mental health clinician, and I'm a coach. And I got on this journey because about 12 years ago, when I thought I was living my best life and I had founded my small private practice, I was in the middle of moving. My 87-year-old aunt at the time, who was independent, living on her own, single, unmarried, without children, was getting ready for her morning and collapsed in her living room with a stroke. And I got a panicked call from the home attendant who had to go to concierge to break into her apartment to find her laying on the floor. We don't know how long she had been laying there at that point. And along the next couple of weeks, I became her unofficial caregiver. I had to find her rehab. I advocated for her not to have a bypass surgery at 87 years of age, although the physician was pushing for that. And she was a miracle case because my aunt actually gained about 30% of her speech back. 7 days later, at 88 years old, she also learned how to write with her alternate hand. And she had the willpower to continue to live for 4 more years. And between my cousin, the co-executive of her estate, and myself, we split the responsibilities because I was already in the field. I became the woman who bought her clothes, did her laundry, sat for medical rounds with the physical and occupational and speech therapist, the doctor, and the social worker every week. I advocated for her services, including ongoing care until she passed, which just happened to be 7 days between my father's demise, which was her brother. The day we buried my aunt, my father passed away. And then about a year and a half later, I became a caregiver again to my mother, who has dementia. So I've been doing this for quite some time. And the reason I really wanted to focus some of my work, I mean, I have a private practice in mental health, but I also do caregiver coaching because about 9 years ago, I had a client who was the first caregiver in my practice to her then mother, who was on oxygen, and she did everything for her mother. And when her mother passed away, it was very traumatic for her. And it took her many years to actually reconcile her life, but she's doing much better these days. And so I know that this is a community that pretty much is siloed from the rest of the population. People go to work and work beside you, and you have no idea that they're probably on second or third shift when they come into work. And so this is a conversation I think we need to have with employers. I think we need to have with our neighbors. We need to have with people in the community, because unfortunately, sometimes we don't get the support that we need from our families. We're either the only daughter, the eldest daughter, the most responsible, and we sort of by default land in these positions. And I learned so much through not having the information when my aunt became ill and having to negotiate selling her property and liquidating her assets to keep her in care. So I really wanted to be someone who could provide necessary resources and support for people who were going through this at a very young age, at an older age, with children involved, with spouses, with a job. And so here we are.
That's great.
Yeah, I thank you for that. And just, let's just all take a breath.
That's a lot.
You know,
That's
the
a
fact
lot.
that you lost your dad the same day you were burying your aunt, the fact that your mom has dementia, and for all of us who have parents who have dementia, that's a slow grieving process in and of itself, right? Like, I know we can all speak to that because it is, it is so, it is, um,
Asha, before
yeah.
we get into it, did you find doing it that did you find through helping others that was healing in itself, therapeutic?
You know, because I'm an activist first, I think I would have come to this place anyway because of the clients that I work with. And the fight that still lives in me to get a yes when I know it's hard for people to get a yes from a pharmacy or a physician or a community-based resource gives me the inspiration to do the fighting for people who don't have the time, who don't have the mental capacity, who are burnt out, who don't have the words to really get the yes that we need. And because of my background in healthcare, I know what to say, how to say it precisely, and get the answer. And I actually just shared this on my stories today because I spent the last week trying to get a medication for a senior, and they kept giving me the runaround. I said, "Listen, I got a job, and I'm a home care provider. I don't have time for this. I need a supervisor." And I got the answer that I
Right.
needed because the way that people push back on you about their restrictions and what they can and cannot do, that's not the point. The patient needs the medication. I need someone who's going to get it to her.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
thank you so much for that. As people are listening, I'm just curious if you are willing to share, who are you caring for at this given moment? Because oftentimes people just think that you're caring for one person, and that's not necessarily the case. I'm actually caring for both of my parents. It started with my dad first, and he has the obvious can't walk as well, the memory, the cognition, all of those things. But because I was paying so much attention to my dad, I didn't realize that my mom was going through her own changes because she's able to go around. She's charismatic. She's talking to people. She's doing things. And then when we came down to Georgia and she wasn't in her familiar space, she wasn't in her routine. And that routine tripped her up. And I recognized, oh, you're missing hours of a day. What, like, we just did something and she couldn't remember, right? Or the frustration, right? The anger and the lashing out. And it's like, why are we, hold on now, why are you yelling at me, right? And then it dawned on me, I could recognize it easily with my dad, but did not recognize it with my mom. So given that, there is a crisis, right? That's happening. And a lot of us are now being forced to have to even live with our parents to help manage because having two different households is just too much in terms of finances. And just the simple fact of you don't often get the care because they are making it even more difficult to get the aid services that's required, especially when you have a parent who's bedridden or a family member who's bedridden or has the dementia because you know that sundown they are out the door and you got to make sure that you are there to keep that door locked. So speak to some of the emotional um, challenges that folks are facing. And when you are forced to be in that space, how can we navigate without wanting to choke them out and wanting to lose our own selves, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
process.
What I love about Nadia is her transparent honesty, right? And so we're going to laugh tonight because sometimes we need to, and that's just
Mhm.
another way to heal through this process. You know, just in the United States alone, they say there are 63 million caregivers, but there are over 80 million caregivers around the globe. And these are just the people that are reported. And when I think about caregivers, although if you could imagine a house, we're going to start kind of large scale and then we're going to open some windows to your questions. We tend to refer to being a caregiver a lot of times to aging loved ones, so child to parent, one generation up. But there are people in the sandwich generation who are giving care up and down. They have children and they have spouses. Then there are people parallel caregiving. They have, a sibling that might have a mental health disorder or a disability that they're giving care for. So there are different types of caregiving. We're going to just, for the sake of this conversation right now, talk about caregiving for parents, to your question. There are so many emotional challenges that people who give care go through. We could run the gamut. I would say the one that we talk about the least is how traumatic it is to be a caregiver. So trauma is both an event and what happens to you as a result of that event. So it's the event, moving in with your parent to give care, leaving your job to have to relocate to provide support to your aging loved one, having a dream deferred because you thought you'd be at a different stage of your life and you aren't, right? So it's the event and then it's the way that you respond to that event. So the hypervigilance, looking out for everything, Did I do this? Are they safe? Did they eat today? Are they bathing? Did I make all the appointments? Where's their medication? That right there lets you know that this is a traumatic experience for you. Being on edge, anticipating something, not being able to rest. Your sleep getting disrupted has long-term effects on your brain just by, trying to anticipate things or being worried. Even the anger that you might feel from how your parents are responding to you. One of the things that I remembered when the first person in my family was diagnosed with Alzheimer's was how quickly they regressed to an earlier stage of life. So now this 60-something-year-old adult is having a tantrum because someone's not moving quick enough. Someone's not bringing their food fast enough. Someone's not responding to their needs quickly. And that over time, it brings up either feelings that you were experiencing in real time, or for some of my clients, experiences that you've already had previously with that person that gets kicked up when you're giving care, because maybe the person that you're giving care to had a tenuous relationship with you previously, was not possibly the most loving individual. Maybe you didn't want to give care to them and you ended up in this position. So anger, resentment, anxiety, depressive episodes. And when I tell people about depression, we tend to talk about it like it's an ongoing lived experience, which it can be. And for most of us, if you were born in this country or you were born with Black skin, you probably are traumatized. But then there are the repeated events that happen that prolong the trauma. So being exposed to somebody who is slowly ailing or dying, someone who's losing their faculties, that level of grief that you live through, that does something to your mentality. And I don't think people who are doing it in real time, doing it presently alongside you or doing it at the same time that you are, really understands that feeling in your gut when you can't settle down, when people tell you to take care of yourself and you're like, what does that mean? Take care of myself. Give me some tangible things to do, because you can't imagine adding one more thing to your day. So it's all of those emotional states that you can literally go through from moment to moment in the course of a day, and the depression can be episodic. It could be you coming in with the hope and the will to do good. And then you see that there's some things that you learn about your aging loved one that you didn't know. Because what we find is that older people can masquerade pretty well for quite some time before you really know what's been going on. And then you get in the house and you find out, oh, you don't manage your bills, or you haven't been eating, clean food or whatever it is, right? Or you haven't been able to call people because you've lost your phone book for the umpteenth time, So when you start seeing it, you're a little bit in shock, I think, at first, because you didn't know how bad off maybe they were until you saw them or until you were in the house. So all of those things, and it's super normal to go on a wave of an experience. And those feelings sometimes are perpetual, even after the caregiving ends. Yeah, Nadia, breathe. I see you.
Because as you were speaking, I was also thinking about how the system re-traumatizes us over and over. So when you were talking earlier, and most people, I'm sure you can relate to this, is that you're fighting and you're advocating and you're getting gaslit. Like there's something wrong. They need more hours and they're telling you no. Like my dad kept falling. He kept falling. And they were telling me he doesn't need more hours. And every time they told me he didn't need more hours, we were back in the emergency room, then back to the hospital, then back to rehab. And who has to sit with him through that entire process? Me, right? And then they give you two or three more hours. And so you're fighting for them in that regard. And then everyone is calling you. This office is calling you. You have to answer every question. You look at your phone, you look at your messages, it's all related to them, and you don't even have space to breathe. Right. And if you don't answer, they're telling you, well, we tried calling you, but I'm at work and you're at work. There's a lot that's happening. And so there's so much that we carry in wanting to love through and support the person that we're caring for. But the system is also not being empathetic or compassionate to those of us who are trying our very best without having had the guidance or the language or the knowledge of what can we even ask for? Because other communities are well versed, right? Other people who have done it for a long time, it is almost systematic for them. They know what to do, and we don't. So just wanted to name that for folks. But I know April has a question to ask.
Now, I was going to ask about, since we're talking about it and you guys are sharing, and I had that kind of day. Many caregivers are holding so much silently and just pushing through, right? What are Asha, what are some of the things you see emotionally? Like, what are the biggest things you see emotionally and the mental challenges that most have in this caregiving space? Like,
Yeah.
if you had point two or three, like, what are the things you see?
hmm The first two, and hopefully people identify with this, one is rage. And I think sometimes we underestimate that women carry rage, but this is a unique kind of experience. You know, you think about the trajectory of most of your development is to get out of the house and to live an independent life and to separate from your family of origin. And then somewhere, even for people in their 20s, or you're being pulled back in. That's the time of your life where you should be thriving developmentally in relationships, you know, maybe a loving romantic one, at work in your career. But now you're being pulled back into the house. So rage is one. So that feeling that what becomes later depression, that's initially rage. Okay, it's just turned inward. The other thing is grief, which can look like sadness, it can look like anxiety, and sometimes that's going to probably perpetuate longer than anything else, because even as you're anticipating loss, right? Anticipatory grief, this person is going to decline, they are declining, they will one day pass, and you're witnessing that. You know, all of that affects your mental state. And there aren't enough papers or studies being conducted about the state of the caregiver after caregiving ends. It's like we're living this in real time and collecting the data, like we are in this conversation, in real time. So it's going to take another probable 10 years just for people to collect the data from these years of living this experience before we see what actually happens. So for me, it was definitely rage and grief are the two dominant ones I see with most people.
Just
You're on mute, April.
Thank you for sharing that. This has been on my mind a lot because of all of the things that I'm dealing with. And I know a lot of people in my generation are. We're on the precipice and the edge of a national crisis, right?
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
speak to that a little bit? I've been doing some studying, but you know more than me.
No, I think we all are going to be experts in this because we're also experiential experts in it, right? So, number one, what we're seeing, especially in the workplace, and I'm going to talk about this to Nadia's point as well regarding the systems that we're interfacing, is the underemployment, particularly in women, because women are oftentimes the frontline workers in caregiving, whether it's professional or personal. And we're experiencing early retirement, premature retirement, because jobs are not going to accommodate us, unfortunately, when we have to leave early for a crisis or call out multiple times because of an emergency or an appointment. And even the hybrid work schedule is not something that they're continuing with employees. So the early retirement, which then of course affects our economic and financial status, right? What does that do to our Social Security? What does that do to our pension? What does that do to savings, especially if you are either single or you're middle age or and above? You know, I know one caregiver who started caregiving at 25. She's now 36. She had to leave her job and relocate to live with her mother. That's impacted her ability to make income those last several years of her life. So those kinds of
There's
things. What
there's
else?
a lady on here. I'm sorry, I just interjected because I read somebody that said she started at 21 and she's only 33.
Yeah, 12 years. Same for me. This started back in 2014. I'm still caregiving. I'm a 3-time caregiver. you know? And so it changes and it changes you, which then, of course, changes our health. That's a crisis that people don't pay attention to. How is this affecting? I remember Nadia mentioned in a previous conversation menopause and perimenopause. How is it affecting your mental health while you're going through multiple crises yourself that people are not addressing? How is it affecting the way you metabolize food? One conversation I had with a physician not very long ago was trying to convince someone to take medication because they had elevated cholesterol levels and had no idea, because they had very little time to spend with this client to talk about what this client was dealing with. You're going to have a different reaction to even how you digest food based off of the stress that you're under, based off of the sleepless nights that you're experiencing. You know, all of those things. So I think we have a healthcare crisis. I think we have a crisis of unemployment for women. I think we're going to have a crisis of family because there are very few multiple caregivers at the same time in the home. And to Nadia's point about these systems that we're interfacing, one of the things that I know a lot of people don't know because they're not in the field. Do you remember a few years ago during the pandemic, there was the term the Great Resignation? People were leaving multiple industries, education, mental health. Well, people also left medicine, they left pharmacy. So, what you're also experiencing now is a reduction in healthcare physicians and specialists.
Yes.
You're getting a reduction in pharmaceutical providers. Pharmacies have closed. These things are not reopening, right? There's a reduction
Right.
in healthcare service providers, home health aides, home attendants. So all of these reduction of service providers and services from the pandemic and post-pandemic have not gone back up. So when you're on the phone for 2 hours with the pharmacy, who's put you through a call center that has you on hold to talk about a medication refill, it's not because they have you in the pharmacy on hold. The call center is rerouting these calls, and there might be one or two pharmacists that are now doing more work than they would have done 5 years ago. And more medications are being delayed, and very few people have multiple insurance providers that can also cover their medications. So now you're dealing with all of these things that are co-occurring, which makes for a global crisis as well as a national one in terms of the way that people are also receiving resources, whether it's going across state lines or going up north to Canada to try to get medication off the internet because it's more affordable than the medication in the US, or trying to get CPAP machines in places that people don't sell them anymore. So we have so many crises that are co-occurring. And because I think this is happening mostly to women as caregivers, it's ignored.
Mm-hmm. You know, I wanted to just name some things for some folks who I know have gone through it. The fact that sometimes it takes us an hour to get to a person because you are pressing five, then you're pressing one, and then it's going to someone else, and then it's the wrong person, and then you got to start over again. It is frustrating. I remember my mom, because of her medication or the way things were set up, I had to go to Rite Aid that was on Empire and Bedford, and we don't live over there. And she was like, I'm gonna get on the bus. You can't get on the bus at 80. That's not what's happening, right? So I would find myself going and I would say to my mom, let's just, we can order it. And I don't want to order it because someone's gonna steal it. And I was like, ma'am, because if I'm not here, you have to talk them off of the ledge. But the reason why I'm naming that is because I want people in the chat, when you talked about rage and grief. If you
Mhm.
could just put it in the chat, because I think that we need to see even for ourselves the feelings that we experience. If you've gone through rage, put a 1 in the chat. If you've gone through grief, put a 2 in the chat. And if you're going through all three, just put 3. I mean, both of them, put 3. And when you start to see how many of us are going through these emotions, and you talked about perimenopause and menopause, and then there are also the men who are on the call that we don't often acknowledge, how men who themselves are made to feel strong and are overwhelmed and don't know how to navigate because people don't ever consider that they need guidance as well, right? How do we not break?
Yeah.
right? Because my car for the past 2 weeks before I got here was my little personal space. I was in that car having
Mhm.
conversations and asking God. And I've been reading the Bible, and I was like, all right, people been angry with God for a minute, but I can I get some grace today, God, right? How do we how do we self-regulate in these moments, right? Because we have to learn to um diffuse ourselves, right?
Mhm.
Like we learn how to do it with others, right? But when it comes to ourselves, once we're ignited and we're pushed to that limit, sometimes you don't know. So, what are some strategies that we can start to utilize when we recognize it, or what are things that we need to look for in recognizing that it's coming?
Yeah, good question. So I'm glad we're here because I want to give people some practical
Hmm.
things that you
Right.
can do right away. So I'm gonna back up a little bit. If you are not yet a caregiver or you've completed your journey and you're here, one of the things I often tell my younger clients, because they have parents who have assets, they own a home, they own property, start asking your parents now, and you're going to get pushback, some
Hmm.
really hard questions. You're going to get pushback when you ask them about, mom or dad, where do you want to go as you get older? When you retire, and let's say everyone's out of the house and it's just you or you and pop or whomever, where do you want to live? In their mind, they're like, of course I'm going to live here. What are you asking me that for?
Hmm.
But that's a very important question for a lot of reasons, because you're starting the conversation regarding, well, who is going to be here to care for you? Because you will need care. Even if your parent ages well in place, they're strong, they're independent, their mind is intact, they're still, for safety reasons, a reason to have that conversation. Who's going to pay for your care as you get older? Mom, dad, sibling, whomever you're caring for, spouse. Okay. Because these conversations that, oh, we'll talk about it when we get there, it's too late then. These have to be preemptive conversations before, honestly, people retire. These should be conversations you're having with your peers when you're working, because you need to start preparing financially for, should your parent, if they live in a house or own property, downsize from an apartment to, I mean, from a house to an apartment. Should they move, if they are widowed or single, into a community with their peers? I know people who are buying homes together, renting apartments together, getting roommates because they're single or they're widowed. Do you know what kind of assets your parents own? Because if so, are their names on accounts that you'll be able to access when you have to start paying for medication out of pocket or paying for transportation services because Accessoride is late for the umpteenth time? So these conversations need to happen when loved ones are younger, and they're going to resist it because of suspicion, just systemic trauma that makes them suspicious of anyone asking them personal or intrusive questions. But it's a question that you need to start asking, and you need to repeat these conversations with them, because waiting until they're already ailed or sick or mentally incompetent is going to put up some barriers for caregivers, because without legal documents in place, like a power of attorney, if you don't know what that is, please look that up. And there are different types of powers of attorney. So, a fiduciary power of attorney, do they have one? At minimum, is there a will? Okay. Is there a living will, versus other types of wills that you can have? So, if they need to go into the hospital, can you speak on their behalf? There are situations where our loved ones go inpatient, and if you live out of state, they go inpatient. Doctors, by their own ethical codes, are going to do as much as they can to keep them alive, which might also include things that are against your spiritual practices or belief system. So, are they going to call you? Not if there's no person's name on file who legally represents this individual. And if your mom or other, loved one is too aged to get there in time, they're going to do all these things that maybe you don't necessarily want them to do to your loved one. So getting organized first, Nadia, getting organized, having tough conversations with your loved ones, finding where these documents are. When my dad died 6 months before the pandemic, my mom had people in her house that were living with her, that were in our family already prior to my dad passing away. And she had another cousin of mine who was also supporting her and my dad when my dad was aging. Well, when that cousin left and I had to get involved, my mother had no idea where the will was. She didn't know if there was a will. She had no idea what bills were being paid. She was overpaying some of her bills. She had credit cards laying around the house. We had people coming in and out of the house. I mean, all kinds of safety issues, right? So, one, get organized, okay? Have those conversations, have them repeatedly, have them gently, and do this thing that we don't tend to do in our community. Name what you feel about being in the position that your parents may leave you in if they avoid these conversations. Say, Mom, I know this is tough for you, but I'm scared to be left in charge if I don't know where your documents are. I'm worried that, I go to work every day or I live away from you. If something happens, if you fall, if you black out, if you whatever, I don't legally have a right to make decisions on your behalf without a healthcare proxy, right? If you're a Jehovah's Witness and you don't want a blood transfusion and you need a blood transfusion, the doctor's going to give you one because there's nothing on file saying that you don't want that. You don't have something like that in place. So advanced directives are important. Those conversations need to be had. And I think if you put it in language that softens this very difficult conversation, and you continue to seed the conversation with what are you worried about? What are you fearful of? They will start to understand, because those things sometimes are too late when your parent is incompetent. And just lastly, there is a difference between being incapacitated and being considered incompetent. Incapacitation is where someone temporarily might be in let's say a fugue. There's like a brain fog that's happening and they cannot make decisions on their behalf for the short term. But if they are having difficulties making decisions and they are having trouble with their functioning, you have to take them to family court and a judge decides whether or not they're legally incompetent. And that's a whole lengthy process. So they could be incapacitated because maybe there's a medication that's, changing their mind, or, there's something else organic going on. But if they're incompetent, now you have someone else that's going to tell you, possibly as the child or the spouse, who's then responsible for your loved one, including who can make decisions on their behalf. So I would say get organized, have the difficult conversation more than once, name your feelings about what's going on with you that you're worried about. So you're making it clear why you're saying what you're saying to them, and be persistent about it.
I want to say thank you for that information, because I had to deal with all of that. And, it's not an easy walk, but it is a necessary one. If you want to be less stressed as the caregiver, you need that information and you need all of your paperwork in tip-top shape. But my next question, I want to open it up because we're already at 42, is just to give the caregivers now with more information on some simple practices and systems they can set up to stay a little grounded in this difficult time.
Yeah, do what you and Nadia did. If you can, find an accountability partner. I think one of the things we forget is that we are in parallel relationships with people. We just don't know it. So it might be someone that you haven't spoken to in a while that you see on Facebook talking about it. Reach out to them. My colleagues from high school and college have been reaching out to me because they see me writing about it on my timeline. And we've started dialoguing about it. People have been DMing me saying, I've been on this journey for X number of years and I'm in the sandwich generation. I have kids and I have parents and this is the hardest thing I've ever done. So start number one, getting it out. It's just like the rage. Holding on to rage will convert to depression and other things. So you want to get it out. So find someone that can be accountable to you. It might be someone in a similar situation, which I would prefer for you, because the thing about people who are not caregiving at the time that you're also caregiving, they dissociate. So they'll say things that they find are helpful in their minds to you that are not helpful to you at all. And they're trying with good intention, but the impact is that it feels unhelpful because they don't actually understand, even if they try to empathize with you about what you're going through. So have someone that you can talk to about it. Also, to Nadia's point too about resources, find the social worker either in the outpatient clinic or the hospital where your loved one may end up or be discharged from, or the nursing home, wherever your loved one is, the social worker is your point person. Instead of 20 people calling you about the same person, have one person that you speak to and be very clear with them. Like Nadia said, listen, while you're at work, so am I, right? I cannot answer the phone when I'm at work. So here's a time, here's a window where I'm reachable. That could be on your lunch break. That could be on your commute to work. It could be on your 10-minute break. But you cannot have someone calling you all day long. And unfortunately, Nadia, this is the sad part. This is a double-edged sword here. When these clinicians in these hospitals see your ever presence, that's actually a negative thing for your parents in terms of services. You probably have learned that, because the more visible you are, the less services your loved one receives, because they'll say, oh, they have a caregiver, they have a daughter, they have a son, they have a grandchild who can help them. So we're going to lessen the number of hours this person is going to receive because there's someone there. No, there's not someone there. You have a job or you have a family or you live out of state. So what I had to tell even my friend who recently lost her parents 3 months apart was, the more present you and your sister and brother are, the less services and support you're going to get for your mom in aftercare. So maybe one of you go and you make it clear you live out of state, or one of you call in for medical rounds, but you have to go back to work. Okay. And sometimes, I think these are our people here. Sometimes you may have to stretch what's actually going on just for the evaluations by the clinicians to be more thorough, so that they send a social worker to the home, if they will do that, to evaluate the home, to evaluate that there are no other people living in the house with the elders, but maybe visit occasionally, so that you could also try to get them more services. But the emotional things that you can do too, besides finding someone who's an accountability partner in the same position as you, if you haven't gotten yourself into some kind of support network outside of the person that I'm talking about, go to a therapist, go to a group, which is free. There are lots of support groups for grieving loved ones, even you grieving while someone is still alive. And those usually are through hospital clinics. Those are through religious institutions. Sometimes even sororities and fraternities offer those types of services. So look for a support group. They're virtual nowadays, so you don't even have to leave your seat to go to them. And also do things that are helpful for you. The one limit, instead of saying boundary, is find the thing that maybe you haven't done for yourself in a long time that you return to. For some people, it's going for a daily walk. For other people, it's sitting in your nook and reading a book. For other people, it's taking naps when you could take naps. Whatever that thing is, activate that, because that one thing will build off of the habit that you're going to need to repeat to give you a little bit of peace of mind, to give you a little bit more time back to yourself.
Thank you so much for that. And one also note that I will add to what you're saying is, it's important for you all to share with your primary care doctors or your specialists if you are experiencing stress related to this, right? And have them document it as well, because when it was time for me to get the additional hours, at some point I went to a hearing through New York State, a fair hearing, and I submitted the documentations from my doctor that said how stressful it was for me, and it was impacting my health because I already had a history of autoimmune diseases related to stress, right, from work. So because of that, and the doctors saying like he needs more than I could possibly provide, they actually gave my dad 12 hours a day, Monday through Sunday. Right. Yeah. So he went from 23 to 49 to 84. But it was all about that documentation, because even in my letter and speaking to the judge, I said, I'm just hoping that y'all are prepared for someone to take care of my parents when I'm not here, because that's what's going to happen. And she was like,
Right.
we'll send
Yeah.
you your stuff. So
really quickly, thank you for that, Nadia. Speak about that if you have a relationship with a physician.
Yeah.
Tell them when they say, oh, this is elevated, or you haven't been to your last medical follow-up in 2 years. I'm a caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
Let them know. People tend to lean into empathy when they have more information. And if you have a therapist, listen, I took about 15 people out on leaves of absence from work during and after the pandemic. So I was able to document what my clients were experiencing. So there was a record with their insurance company, their disability insurance provider, as to what kind of stress they were under, what kind of workplace PTSD they were experiencing. And that provided some cushion for them to get respite before they had to return to work and all the other things. So absolutely, if you have a relationship with a physician, keep that going and make sure you inform them that you are a caregiver.
Yep. April.
All of this, we would need like 3 hours.
Yeah.
At least, right? Because there's so much to unpack. But the good news is we have started a group, Facebook group. So we will be sharing resources and more information. That we'll also share Asha's information. But we have time for some questions. And we really want to make sure we start answering whatever you are feeling tonight. So can you raise your hand if you have a question, and Asha will try to answer it, or one of us? There's so many questions here.
There's so many questions and comments.
Can you please share the chat if possible? This is so much great information here.
So in regards to the Facebook group, you know how I am. Some of y'all know how I am, but you did get an email from me breaking down information. And those of you who registered after the fact, you'll get an email. Everyone will get an email from me. I will provide the name of, the name of the group is the CareWell Collective. And so the idea, it's all about caregiving, but the wellness behind it and prioritizing yourself with the resources that you need. And it's a collective because we want to bring together the experts, because we are not the experts. Yes, we're going through it, but we want to bring those who have been practicing and can provide you with the resources. So I will share that here as well. I'm going to also be sharing Asha's information. You can follow her on her various accounts as well as her website. But if you do have a question, I know some of you are putting it into the chat, but if you're able to get off of mute, if you raise your hand, we can call on you. You don't have to show your face if you don't want to, but it's me trying to multitask, and I could do this so much.
I also see some comments in the chat too that while people raise their hands, see Cookie, I can respond to.
So
go ahead.
Oh, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I had mentioned
Cookie.
Hi, April. I had mentioned a night for resources. So I'm a Medicare specialist. So I have turned every stone statewide and nationally for my parents. It's my parents and my sister. So I'm taking care of three, two elderly and a sister with challenges. And my parents were financially responsible. They did everything they were supposed to do as good citizens, paying taxes, and they're living off of their Social Security pension and their savings, but they're not eligible for state assistance, right? But if they were to pay the $60 an hour, 7 days a week, right? 7 to 10 hours a day, they would be penniless before they die, because it's both of them. So that's another story, and that's why I'm here. So I think it would be a great idea if we could all share any kind of resources, such as if somebody has a family friend who would be willing to help bathe my dad, who's 6'3", 280 pounds and can't walk. Because those things like that are so difficult to find, even within an agency. And sometimes they want to charge you $25 more because your dad is 6'3", 280 pounds, and they can't walk. So I said, I've turned every stone, and it's been challenging. So that's
one question and one suggestion. You mentioned a lot of assets. Do your parents have a trust?
Well, we're working on revising a lot of that, the wills and the trust. I mean, I'm in it right now, from POA to proxies to estate attorneys. Yeah.
It's a lot. Okay. Because for those folks who, similar to Cookie, thank you for your question, who have family members with property or land, any kind of asset. If you can speak to an estate planning attorney in your state, even just for consultation, they can help you set up a family trust to put all of those assets into it, so that if in the 5-year look back, as they call it, for Medicaid, that's protected, at least for now in certain states, from the government coming for your parents' belongings,
Right.
so that you can keep some of the assets and pass down the family wealth. Here's the other thing, to your point, Cookie, and maybe to a few other people here. The Department of Aging for the state in which you belong, Department for the Aging, write that down, and I'll put it in the chat. They have CHAs, which are certified home health agencies. Those
Mm-hmm.
are organizations that have trained people to come into the home, and they do evaluation for services for your parents. There's a nurse case manager that opens the case. Usually a doctor writes an order for it, whether your loved one is inpatient somewhere or in the community. And then you get the ongoing home health aid services. Those folks are trained and they're paraprofessionals. Then there are what's called home attendant
Mm-hmm.
agencies. Now here's the difference. The rates will be a little bit lower for a home attendant versus a home health aide in some places.
Right.
If you have, to Cookie's point, a neighbor, a volunteer that you can train, an agency like care.com, for example, write that down as well. You can find people who you may be able to negotiate a rate that's suitable to coming in for a few hours at a time to do certain things. Now, the thing about that is you have to provide the training to the home attendant, how to provide meals and what time to administer medication, and how to work with maybe someone who is escalating. So those folks you might do more training with, but the price of what you're going to get is going to tend to be a little bit lower than someone who's a certified home health attendant.
Well, thank you for that. And I've done all of that as well.
Yeah.
But also, this will be another call, I'm sure, is when you're dealing with your parents, they talk back and they push back,
Mm-hmm.
unlike dealing with a 5-year-old. So I can't tell you how many people I've brought in to help. I've done all the negotiating, the care.com, dealing with working out things with Medicaid and trust. We just couldn't go there. But it got to the point where that's the challenge now, which affects me mentally and emotionally when they push back. And now they're both diagnosed with cognitive decline.
Yeah. Are you in
So
the
you
home with
see,
them?
I I am. So I'm not going to take up much
No. I
time,
hear you.
but my situation is very complicated and taxing, which is why I've left Georgia.
Okay.
And I've been here since January, and I think I'm going to make a permanent move. And I've even left my husband in Georgia.
Okay.
So
I,
that tells you how complicated everything is. But
yeah.
I'm just making a suggestion if we can have a night of like resources, because there's so many and we
Yeah.
can all share it with each other,
Absolutely.
that would
Absolutely.
be helpful.
I
So
went through the
that's just
same
an
thing with
example.
I went through the same thing with my mother, and my landlord is going through the same thing with his mother.
Right,
Yes, they're going to push back, because what we have to remember is sometimes we infantilize our seniors. They're not children. They're
right.
not. They're not babies wearing diapers. Stop calling it diapers. Okay. We are dealing with aged people, and we want to provide dignity to our loved ones, even when they get on our last nerve. They could work a nerve like no one else can work a nerve. But at some point, even the pushing back is a resistance to the change that's happening within, and also that they feel projected onto them. At some point, even the person who's in the house some of the time may have to just bring the person in the house anyway. My mother had a total attitude for months with the home attendant. I did not care. I have to save myself. So I was
Yeah.
in the home with the home attendant. That gave me time to do other things, like be on the phone for 2 hours, like find credit cards that were all over the home, like putting documents in organized places, while the home attendant prompted her for her bath and put her food on the table and administered medication to her, and sometimes went and picked up medication. So I gave her certain tasks to take some load off of my plate. After a while, it becomes, this is what has to be. I'm in charge making these decisions. You can have an attitude. We can live with attitudes, right? But are you going to outlive this process, which I'm more concerned with?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And please save your receipts. Save your receipts so that you can also get them written off.
I had the exact same mirrored experience, Asha, and it's very uncomfortable when you have to move your mother in your house. And I'm lucky I do have care now, but you're still managing all of it and having a
Yeah.
bunch of people in and out of your house, and you are still at the core and it's not the same thing. So yeah,
It's tough.
it's a lot.
It's tough.
And
You're the
you have to be
COO.
you have to be the gatekeeper. You really
Yes,
do.
you are the chief operating officer of now this entire thing that you're experiencing,
Everything.
right?
Organization.
And anybody that wants to fight you on that, you have to make that known. I'm the COO right now. So
Right.
anything that happens falls on me, and I'm going to be in
And
charge of this. So you have to come under my guidance to follow my instruction. And that pushing back, especially if you are a more highly sensitive person like I am, you're an empath, you tend to be more introverted like I am, that's hard. But you know what? That short-term hard is going to give you more peace in the long term.
absolutely. And guess what? You have to do the same thing by letting your mother know as well, or your
That's right.
parent, or
That's
whoever
right.
you're caring
Whoever
for.
you're
You
caring
have to
for,
take that.
you say, I cannot do this by myself. You're going to do this with some help, and this person is helping me. End of story. And keep pushing.
And I
Well,
just want
thank
to
you.
say to Cookie, I get it. I moved down here part of the sandwich generation to be with my daughter after I left education and wanted to be full-time here, enjoy my home that I worked so hard for. And the minute my dad got sick, I had to bring my mother back to New York, and we thought we were only going to be there for a couple of days, and we've been there now 3 years. So I get it. I understand it. It is very complicated. My parents were separated when I was 11 and divorced. And so we are all under the same apartment in New York City. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here in this other home. Yeah, So I understand, right?
Yeah,
That's a whole other session.
we're going to have a follow-up.
But this is
We
why
will
we
have
are
another.
creating this as a series. And we knew that this was so important. So first, the fact that there are 70 people in this room, and there were a little bit more, speaks volumes. And I know that there are probably things that are resting on your hearts, and there are questions that you have. So again, I'm going to send out an email. We put the Facebook link in the chat. If you can't find it, it'll be in the email. I have all of your emails because you've registered. It is a private Facebook chat, so it's not open to the public. And so we ask for confidentiality. What's shared in the space stays in the space. Our goal is to remain virtual, but then also, scheduling meetups at some point. And so that's long term because we literally just started this. And we are just being in obedience to God, knowing that there was a need.
Yeah.
And so we were answering that call. And so I'm grateful and I'm thankful for each and every one of you for your willingness to participate, those who shared their stories within the chat. And I know it's hard because not everybody understands. And people say things out of thinking, just like Asha said, they're saying something to be helpful, but it's not. It's just absolutely not. And you don't want to be like cold and turn off from people, but that's where the isolation comes from because like it's like you don't understand, and I shouldn't have to feel guilty about feeling the way that I do or not have the answers because I have the answers for everything else. I just don't have the answers for this, and sometimes I feel like I'm at a loss, and I just need to say that to someone without saying, girl, this too shall pass. It's not passing. It's been 3 years. I'm still here. Right. And my grandmother lived to 99 and my mother is 82. So I got some time. Right. And my dad is 83. He's going to be 83. So, I want to honor everyone's time because it's 8:02, but I also know that God brought us here. And before we started this call, we had to say a prayer because we came into this having the angst, having to deal with, like I had to deal with my mother calling me in the middle of this, right? And so you don't have to stay if you don't want to, but I do believe in thanking God and just asking for all the things, right? So I'm just going to do that right now because I'm called and moved to do so. So God, we thank you. We thank you for this community. We thank you for the establishment of a space that was needed for those whose hearts and minds have been calling for an answer. And Lord God, you knew that this was the appointed time and the appointed place. And so we appreciate Asha. Thank God, thank you for her experience, although it's been hard, but her experience has turned into knowledge that she is sharing, Lord God. So we ask for a hedge of protection as she continues to do this work, as she continues to care for her own family, Lord God. And I ask for those who came here, Lord God, thirsty for just a word, thirsty for grace, thirsty for just time and just having this moment for themselves to hear something that was a nugget or finding and connecting with someone and knowing that they are not alone in this process. Lord God, you know our hearts. You know we want to do good. You know that we love our families and we want to honor our mothers and our fathers and our extended family. But Lord God, you know the pressure that is on us. And sometimes we don't have any more to give. So I'm just asking, Lord God, in this moment, as you have interceded with this time and you have given us the name CareWell Collective, that we understand that you have chosen us for this space, Lord God, and to send the message to others, Lord God, and to attract what we need moving forward, because we are your children, Lord God, and we are caring for those who you have blessed to bring us into this space. So with that, I just ask, as we leave this place, that we have the ability to remember that you are the great I am, our Jehovah Jireh, and all blessings come through you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah, thank you. And Nadia's going to share my resources. And, I actually have time. I can stay even for a few minutes to address some more questions if you have. I know people had a lot above that they didn't get to, ask us. Thank you, Danielle, for, being present to what you're feeling right now. This is hard. We try to put a lot in a little bit of time, from processing to resources to naming to what to expect. But, because it's the first time, like I said, I can stay on even for a few more minutes and just be here. I have at least until 8:30. So my mother already interrupted me a couple of times. I can stay right here and talk to you all. She's good, So I have time if anybody has any other thoughts. Oh, I see one coming in. So it's really up to Nadia and April.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah. Someone asked above, are there any thoughts I have on EMDR therapy? Yes. I don't know how many of you know what EMDR therapy is.
What is
Okay.
that?
So that acronym stands for eye desensitization movement response. And it's where the therapist moves their finger in a certain fashion across your eyes in front of you to reconcile the left and right hemispheres of your brain. And it triggers traumatic experience in a way to rewire the brain and what the memories do to your body. So it's a very effective form of trauma therapy. Many people only need maybe up to 12 sessions. And it's different than talk therapy because you're doing this movement under the guise of the therapist. You're not reliving the trauma by re-experiencing it through talking. And so people have found it very helpful, especially for people with one traumatic experience or complex PTSD, which is prolonged or multi-serial traumas. So yeah, EMDR has been one of the most effective forms of trauma therapy, but there's also CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is what I do, psychoanalysis, which is what I'm trained in as well. So there are a few. And then there's trauma-informed care, which is a little bit slower of a process. I do that as well with my adult clients. So hopefully that helps to answer some questions.
I do have a question if I could ask it. My mom, we haven't gone to the neurologist yet. Our appointment, it was so hard getting an actual appointment for a neurologist, but we finally have one and it's scheduled for April 24th. But in the time leading up to that, like, she's been like forgetful. She'll say, oh my gosh, I misplaced my keys, or, little things like that, which kind of alerted me. So we started doing like cognitive therapy with a neurofeedback chiropractor. And I find that it's been somewhat helpful. Like, really, they do like memory type games, like on a computer, like remember the sequence of these numbers. That's what we go one time a week. But as I started really thinking back, my grandmother died in 2019, and my mom had been my grandmother's caregiver. 2019, I had also just had my son. And so when my grandmother died, I don't think I realized the magnitude of grief that my mom felt. She had lived in the home with her parents her entire life. And so slowly but surely, she began to lose weight, like over the years, like substantial weight without trying. And so when I went to her primary care doctor, we did every test. I went with her, and like I was just nervous, like, is it some kind of cancer or something? And the primary care doctor said, I think your mom, Danielle, is experiencing grief. My mom had stepped out the room. She said, she's been here a couple of times, and since that time, I noticed she talks about your grandmother a lot. And I don't know, and I guess I really won't know until we go to a neurologist, but I was wondering, could grief have such a strong impact on someone that it begin to like combined, I guess, with also the fact she's 79, will be 80, but could that bring on some kind of dementia like episodes?
Yes.
You know,
In short, yes. And I'm going to say this because I think a lot of times we also fear what will happen to us as we give care. Dementia is not a natural occurrence, which is a symptom of other symptoms just because you age. And I think a lot of people say, oh, like I know I'm going to get dementia as I get older. This comes with being old, forgetting things. That's not necessarily true, right? And we know right now, as of what the research says, there are about 7 types of dementia, 7 types. So we don't know if it's vascular dementia that she's, possibly experiencing, or Lewy bodies, or none of that. Dementia and other things mimic similar diagnoses for things that we see with depressive patients. So grief, for example, can absolutely change someone's psychology, right? And right now, because there's little research that I've seen in terms of the studies on people who've survived caregiving, you can see changes in physical form. So as a person was giving care, not taking care of themselves, so losing weight, having changes in their metabolic health, which is what you're talking about, which can also include brain changes. At 78 years old, if she's having some mild forgetfulness, that's not so abnormal. If she was doing things that impaired her functioning, like she wasn't remembering to bathe or eat, or she takes medication to take her medication, if she was doing strange things or even hearing voices, I would be more concerned. But seeing physical changes and expressing loss, even what the doctor has observed, is probably more accurate. But to rule out anything else is wonderful to know that you have an appointment so that they can give her maybe an MRI. They're going to do what's called a mini mental status exam in the office, maybe have her write some things out in different mathematical order or chronological order. And if they find that she doesn't have anything biochemical things that are going on, and it's just a phase of the grief, which can be prolonged grief, then I would recommend talk therapy for her. I have a patient right now who's 86 years old in therapy with me. I have another patient who's in her early 60s or mid 60s who's a caregiver with me. So it's not too late if she wants to talk to someone, and she can even start with using her insurance to do so it's more affordable. But having someone who has a specialty in grief, who works with the geriatric community, is something I would recommend. But you absolutely can see those.
Is there anything that I should be asking the neurologist, or I'm fresh out the water, so I'm just like, we have this appointment, but I'm not certain if there's like several questions that should be at top of my mind too, that I should be asking as I go.
Sure. So some physicians will walk you through the process before they do anything. So when they enter the room, introduce yourself so that they know to talk to you and your mom. Sometimes what we see is they'll talk to you, which is disrespectful to the patient, and not talk directly to her. So if they do that, I would try to engage her at the same time as they're talking to you, but also ask the physician to explain what you should expect in this first appointment, because there might be subsequent appointments. Okay. And you want to do just like you're doing right now, have a notebook that's dedicated just to your mom's care. Write down every appointment, the name of every physician and their specialty, and what you're expecting in this first and any subsequent appointments. The initial appointment, from my experience with a neurologist, is going to be just what I described, a mini mental status exam. So they're going to ask your mom maybe to take a notepad and write down a series of numbers and read it back to them, or to tell them, who the president of the US is, their date of birth, where they were born, those kinds of questions. And that might just be the initial conversation. And then they're going to ask you, of course, what are you here for? So if you have some log of things that you've seen happening with your mom, I would also, in the appointment, ask for your mom's consent to talk about it, because she might not talk about it. So say, Mom, is it okay if I just express what I'm concerned with? Right? And then you can go forward and say, I've noticed these 3 things, and how long. So the duration of time that you've noticed these 2 or 3 things going on, and any other people's reports. If there are any other people who have contact with your mom, what have they told you about some things that they're concerned with? And then ask, is this, normal? Is this, also adding in the grief? I lost my grandmother, and this was such and such year, and since then I've noticed these things. Is this typical of the patients that you treat? Because you want to know, do they specialize in geriatric patients, because there's different types of neurologists. And that might be all you're going to experience in that initial appointment. And then if they don't mention, which they should, subsequent appointments, say, should I bring my mom back in 6 months? Right? Should she have an MRI, or a scan of some type? Also, in the state in which you live, what would be the process if your doctor needed to refer?
I'm in New Jersey.
Okay. So are there any processes that they would put in place for seniors if your mom wanted to participate? Because it could be as simple as her engaging with other seniors, like maybe in an adult social daycare center, or she might not want to do that.
Signed her up. Now she goes 2 days a week to our local senior center. She lives in Newark. My parents. So I knew she needed like some kind of engagement. And one of her girlfriends had mentioned, like, I think her girlfriend almost was wondering if she has Alzheimer's or dementia, because she was like, your mom, is forgetful, or some things I noticed. Mm-hmm. So I did get her engaged in that way, and she loves it. She loves going. I feel like it does something different for her. I try to, on the weekends, have her spend the night at our house every Friday night, so that she engages with my son, who's only 6, because that is like definitely super fun for her. So I trying to think of everything I can during the day. Her and my dad are home together. I mean, he's not much better, but cognitively, he's not having any issues. He's just ornery, but that's a whole nother story.
Can I ask you a question?
Just figuring out. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How are you with your grandmother's loss?
I'm okay. My grandmother lived to be 94.
Okay.
I didn't live in the house with her my entire life. My parents, when they got married, moved on the 2nd floor in my grandparents' home.
Okay.
So my mother, for 79 years, like not so long ago, she told me, because she a couple of times was speaking my granny in present tense. And I said, Mommy, well, my granny's not here anymore. And she said, I was with my mother for a very long time. I'm going to talk about her as much as I want to.
That's right.
So, I know, like, having gone off to college, living other places, I think I was okay processing. I'm okay processing the grief. Not that I don't miss her, because I do. That was my girl. We go get our nails done together, and I spent a lot of time with her. But my mom lived with her her mother died. She's 79 now. She'll be 80 this year. My grandmother died in 2019. My mother had her mother for 70 plus years of her life. I couldn't even imagine. My grandmother fell on the floor. It was Labor Day of 2019. My grandmother fell on the floor. My mother heard a boom. She was in the basement doing laundry. My grandmother had fell on the floor, wound up having a brain bleed. Mm-hmm. My mother has not, to this day, she will not walk into our basement.
Okay. So there's a couple of things there. Let me start with the first. The reason I asked you that question is that unconsciously, we sometimes think that we've dealt with our grief, but we avoid talking about grief with our loved ones. So depending on how you process grief, will either keep you away from talking about it with your mother, or it'll help you to engage conversations with your mother about her mother. Okay. Right. So talking to your mother about her grief would be helpful, because you're in the family unit, and your mother is still present to her memories of her mother. So the speaking in present tense doesn't mean she's hallucinating. It means maybe spiritual, culturally, that's just the way that she keeps her memory alive and keeps her close to her emotionally. The not going on the same floor where she had the incident might be bringing up some guilt and remorse for your mother. So that's why I mentioned having someone that she could talk to professionally outside of you could also be a benefit, because you're dealing with the social component of having her go to the adult social daycare center, and art therapy, music therapy are very supportive for the neurogenesis of new brain cells. But the spiritual piece, the emotional piece might be, hey, Mom, do you Do you remember certain things about grandma that you want to talk about today? And you move at her pace. Some days she may want to, some days it might bring up some anger, especially if she has guilt about her being in the house when she fell and not being able to prevent that from happening. So move at her pace. See if she wants to talk to someone professionally. Say, you know, Mom, there are people out there that talk to you just about these things and it's private. Do you want to speak to someone? And it might just be a conversation you have a few times. It usually takes people 3 to 5 times of initiating that conversation before they're willing to actually go talk to someone professionally. Okay.
Thank you all so much. I can't tell you just one, thank you, Nadia, for putting this online. And I've been have followed you because I was an elementary school principal, but now I lead a small charter school network. And I saw this, and at first I was like, I went, but then I was like, no, I have to sign up. So thank you. I just truly thank you.
I'm glad you came. Nicole, I see your question, but I also want to address really quickly a question in the inbox from Christina. She had a question about psilocybin for Alzheimer's and dementia patients. So there's a lot of controversy around psilocybin. I'm not sure how many of you know about psilocybin, but it's a psychedelic medication treatment for people with different types of mental health disorders. And Alzheimer's is one, but there are also treatments like marijuana use for people with dementia and Alzheimer's. My thoughts are limited on it. I do have a psilocybin provider that I know and have sent some of my clients to. One, it'd be important to know if there's other mental health history that's available because sometimes psilocybin triggers psychosis. So with dementia and Alzheimer's, there's already the likelihood that there's a, trigger their component. I would discuss it with their physician. I would discuss it with the provider to see if they also have experience working with other people in this catchment group before you actually proceed with that procedure, especially if they're on medication, because there's a whole cleansing process before that happens that might actually be counterintuitive. So my thoughts are talk to the loved one's providers, most importantly, talk to the clinician who also guides the person through it, and then get the data on what are the after effects of it, especially if they go back on their medication, if they're on medication. I think personally, because I'm an integrative psychotherapist, I use all modalities with my clients, and I also work with other providers. Food is medicine. My mother's attitude and behaviors changed drastically when I brought in clean food. She had old spoiled food in the fridge because people weren't paying enough attention to it. She was eating too many carbohydrates. And so it was making her belligerent, and she doesn't have yet an Alzheimer's diagnosis. I'm suspecting she has vascular dementia, but we're going to verify that when I take her back to the neurologist at the end of the summer. So when I changed her diet and brought in more fruit, more fiber, clean water, 3 meals a day, sunshine, music, companionship, we have had no issues with her attitude for the most part, and she got attitude. But we don't have the other kind of attitude. And she's much more cooperative with me, and she's much more independent, and she's already fairly independent. So for me, diet has been the thing that has really changed her mentality and her mental illness in other ways. Nicole?
Did you do meal prep or?
Yeah, I do meal prep now. I had a home attendant, but she left us about 6 weeks ago. So she was taking care of all the meals during the day for lunch and breakfast, but I now do batch meals. So breakfast, I'll batch, lunch, I'll batch. And then if I have time in between appointments, I'll sit with her for breakfast and lunch. And that actually prompts her to eat her food. But I leave signs for her too. Lunch is here, breakfast is here. She always goes out for breakfast, but she has to be reminded for lunch. Yeah. How about you, Nicole?
Thank you. I just want to say, I'm off now. I just want to say thank you all. Thank you, everybody, for this. Thank you, Nadia, for bringing this together. Thank you just for your expertise. I have been in many support groups or whatever, and I'll say, just candidly, it is really nice to see a bunch of women of color, and no offense to people in this call who are not. But this is usually a call full of white women who are caring for their husbands who are also old. And so it is very refreshing and helpful to be in a space with people who are like me. That's number one. I dropped in the chat there. My mom has Parkinson's, which is also considered an old white man's disease, and it's not. And so there is an organization called Parkinson's Place that is open for like anyone, whether you have Parkinson's or not. So those of you who are looking for speech therapy for your parent or your person that you're caring for, that does like a person that's doing trivia while they're like doing chair yoga at the same time, like multi-modality type things. They have so many free, completely free. You don't have to do anything but just register for an account. Everything on there is free. It's excellent. And then I don't know if there are folks who are in like South Jersey, which is closer to Philly. The Penn system is also really good. Danielle, my mom goes to the neurology center at Penn. And I'd say too, like, my mom saw a neurologist for years before she was diagnosed with Parkinson's because they just were like, oh, that's just what old people, you're old. My mom's 84 now. She's had Parkinson's probably for 15 years and was diagnosed probably 5 years after she already had it. So there's a lot of kind of like, oh, just chalking it up to this is how you are. There's also so much like confusion around like what is mood and behavior, or attitude, as we would call it, versus what is a cognitive thing that folks are experiencing. You know, what is anxiety versus what is just like we don't like have the language for that all the time. And I think that people think we don't, and so they'd say like, oh no, that's not that. My mom has like crippling anxiety about the news, about Trump, about every single thing, about me going outside, about anything. Um, and it doesn't, and it comes out as like, fear, like unquestionable fear that doesn't, irrational fear that doesn't make a lot of sense sometimes. Um, and sometimes not hallucinations but like delusions, and different things. My mom does not have dementia, and so she also like cookies parents have a home which is like my retirement home, so you cannot sell it and you can't because I'm taking care of you and doing all these things, and I need to not have to pay a mortgage when I retire, and I don't have any kids, and my husband and I don't have kids, and so we need to have a place where we can. So I'm getting a stair lift because I'm going to use it when I am living.
No, don't claim that. Don't claim
No,
that. You
me
don't know
as
that.
I'm not. You're right, because I'm also trying to touch my toes and have longevity
That's
and
right.
things. But I think that I just I can't even go into all the different the parts of
Okay.
stories, but I
But you
just
had a
want to know.
question.
My question is,
Yeah.
how do we people who similar to Cookie, but like the people whose parents are not, like you said, like a meal prep for my mom, and I can leave her a note and she'll just like do it. My mom does not, she's very not combative, maybe manipulative,
Mm,
maybe other things that come up, and it is so hard. And so the rage that you spoke of, I feel 75 hours a day,
yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
And not mad at her, but just mad that everything is a fight. Like there, if it would be different if there was a dementia or a cognitive decline, because I could be like, well, I'm just gonna make this decision. But it's like, no, it's my money. And
That's right.
so the caregiver costs too much and I don't want to pay for it. So now you have to do it. So when the caregiver is too expensive, and I found one that is $23 an hour. What?
Okay.
And she's excellent. And it's
Okay.
through an agency. And she has insurance through and it's too much. And only
Okay.
caregiver. So
I'm
there's
glad
some
I'm glad you brought that back up because Nadia mentioned something like that earlier as well. This is where our discernment has to kick in because I didn't say this earlier in the talk, but being persistent and pacing yourself and repeating yourself is going to be important in certain instances. But in other instances, you're going to have to be withholding of information. I got to the point where I could not have discussions with my mother or my father before that as well about things that needed to be done because it was always about we don't have money for that or how much does that cost. It's like, listen, bro, you got money for that. Stop playing.
mm-hmm,
You know,
mm-hmm,
you do. You just don't want to spend it on that. And even when I was a medical social worker, I would talk to these very wealthy clients that everything you told them was like, we don't have money for that. And we knew that they had X number of resources. And what we would try to explain to them is this is what your money is for as you age. You're not working. This is what you spend your money on. This is to help you in your older years. So, one, some of us have to lie to our parents. I'm just going to be honest. Some of us have to really lie to our parents and say, like, for example, with my mother, she's an elitist kind of woman. We couldn't tell her we were getting a home attendant. I had to tell her a nurse was coming here. So we kept saying the nurse, and she was like, oh, like she felt special, like, oh, my doctor assigned me a nurse. Yep, the nurse is coming. The nurse is prompting you to take your bath. The nurse is going to put your food out because I have to work. So we kept referring to her as the nurse. She knew no differently. It was a certified nurse's assistant, but she was also a private pay home attendant. So we had a lot of her to get her to do things. It was, you don't want to take a bath today? We have a doctor's appointment. So the doctor needs to see you clean. Oh, mom would get in the shower in a heartbeat because she's going to see her professional.
Hey,
so
Mom.
And then she would get dressed and go, where am I going? We're like, oh, the doctor called and canceled. We have to reschedule. We would just make up stuff to get her to take a bath. All right. So sometimes you have to do that. And sometimes you have to stop having conversations about what you're going to do. This is when I was saying earlier, if you don't have advanced directives or a fiduciary power of attorney, please start working towards that while your parents are with their own mental capacities in place for now, because this is going to make your life a little easier so that you can access things. My mother did something I didn't even know she did, which has benefited me. She put me on her checking account when I was a teenager. So that's perfect. So I have checkbooks that come to the house. So I can write checks for service providers. I can write checks for medication copays because I can pay property managers to come and do things for me. So that has been a life-saving entity that I would have never thought of if I hadn't had that opportunity to be put on her checking account. So that's been the thing that I use. And then what I say is, your insurance is paying for it. She doesn't know the difference because she doesn't know anything about her insurance. She doesn't know anything about her health benefits. She doesn't know anything about the VA benefits. So everything is, oh, who's paying for that? I got it. I'm paying for it. And she shuts right up. So you have to be very creative. You have to be discerning about what you disclose, because you're going to have to learn to disclose less and just start acting more. And then you prep the person, the professional, when they come in the house as to what to expect. Yeah, you're the nurse. You're nothing else but the nurse. And that's what we're calling you. Also expect that they might not want you there. These people know that. They've experienced this before. They may have some resistance to you telling them what to do. So give them options. I talk about this on my caregiver coaching IG page. Don't tell them what to do. Give them options. Do you want your PJs on first, or do you want tea first? Do you want to take your bath first, or do you want to have your breakfast first? Give them options so they feel like they have agency, because they do. And that's going to relieve you, because I think really the rage is deep grief. That this has been your experience at this stage of your young life with this particular parent. And it is hard to release that they are losing control for them and you watching them change, and they're not the person you remembered them to be. So even without the dementia or other cognitive changes, the fight for their independence is what they're holding on to, and they deserve that. So everything shouldn't be a fight for you. Some things you're going to have to let go of. Some things are not going to get done when you want them to, and that's okay. The basics are in place. Are they loved? Are they fed? Are they clean enough? Do they have resources in the place?
Yes.
Basic necessities met, job well done.
But they're entitled and they want everything.
Yep, mine too. Mine too. And guess what? It took me about 12 or 13 months to stop being vigilant about everything I thought was going to go wrong, or her every need being met. I'm like, she is fine. I go check on her. She's watching TV. She's not thinking about me, right? So I had to turn my nervous system around, because I cannot afford to be on edge 24/7. I'm a professional caregiver. I'm a therapist too. I got clients in real crises.
Yeah.
I cannot be on edge 24/7. I'm a young woman. I'm a newlywed.
Yeah.
We're trying to have a baby. I can't be on edge 24/7. So I had to work on things where I put time into my calendar to decompress every single day. I turn away from caregiving. I turn on to my life with my husband and my personal things. I turn my day on to me at the top of the day, and then I turn into first shift with my mom until we get another replacement for the home attendant. So entitlement is a part of their birthright. They think they should get what they want when they want. They're going to learn the hard way, because you cannot let them outlive you with trying to take over more than what they can get from you. And that's going to come around to you recognizing your own suffering in this process, your own grief in this process, and going somewhere and grounding, putting your feet in some grass if you can, sitting on the floor, laying on your stomach and wailing. That's a good one. You know, rocking back and forth to activate your parasympathetic nervous system, tapping your foot, humming. Those old ladies hummed for a reason back in the day. Now I know why. So you're going to have to activate your parasympathetic nervous system constantly. I sigh. My mother looks at me. She's like, she don't
What's
say a
wrong?
thing, but
Well,
I sigh.
I
sigh.
just have to breathe.
I have to get it because I need it out more than I need it in. And I know with my own autoimmune issues, I have asthma, trauma. I have to release that. And I can't release it by just complaining all the time to my husband. He doesn't want to hear that all the time, or my friends who don't know what I'm going through. So I sigh, I hum, I pivot when she starts saying something that gets on my last nerve, and I leave her standing there. She's fine. She's going to not remember what just happened, and I'm going to move past the moment, and so are you. So you have to remember yourself. I tell people that all the time. Remember your life in the way that it is right now while you grieve the way it used to be and the way you used to have it with your mother. And let her entitlement be what it is while you work with someone who's going to help you with this, because you cannot be responsive to every single thing, Nicole. You're not going to be able to keep that up. It's going to burn out your nervous system. And then who's going to be there in place of you to continue the caregiving? I mentioned in the chat, 66% of caregivers do not make it beyond caregiving. 66% die.
Caregiver survivor. I was like,
Yes.
what is that?
Yeah, 66% die before giving care and before caregiving ends. So you cannot be a part of that 66%. So you have to, it has to be a non-negotiable boundary. You're going to get back to your health in one way or another. Find someone to talk to, reach out to a therapist who specializes, tell your mother alive you have to. Listen, your doctor is referring you to a geriatrician. Why? I don't know. We got to go to the appointment.
Right.
And do what you got to do. And you start moving as if you are the chief operating officer of this family, because you are.
Thank you.
Okay. I see Emma, and I know I saw seeing Doris before I saw Emma.
We have time for one more. I don't know, was Emma there or
I saw Annette first. I saw Annette and then Emma.
I think we should do Annette, and then you can leave your information for everyone, and everybody else we can follow up with, and I'll share the group chat, and we will be doing this again. So this has been like priceless information, Asha. Thank you, and everyone who came. So let's close it out, and Annette, and then Emma. Let's try to be
I try to be as quickly as possible. First of all, thank you.
And if I leave you guys, it's because I'm on my battery, but I'm
no worries. We all got to sign off. It's already after 8:30, but go ahead, Annette.
I'll try to be quick. I'm not famous for it, but first of all, thank you so much, because it's like, wow, I didn't really realize how many people are also caregivers. Sorry if I get emotional.
That's okay.
I do care for my now 83-year-old mom. She has stage 3. And that's what I do in the evening, besides having 3 kids. And my day job, I work closely with the CEO. He's 85 years old. He's the one that has Parkinson's and dementia. No, he has not retired, and he still runs the place. And so it's baby gloves on all the time, because he's not my family, but yet I have to do my job. And I also I'm now the one that is in charge of his appointments and in charge of, people are like, doesn't he have kids? Yes, he has a big family, but they leave it on me. I've been in the emergency room until midnight while they go to Deal, New Jersey, an hour away. And it's like, he gets in his moods and his dementia setting in, and we have hours long of the same, meetings all day long. And so it's tough, and I could imagine, that they're adults too, and they're losing control. And so I have to like balance, how I feel and how they feel. So there's also a woman that works at my job, and her husband is the same. So I also go with my boss and, everyone to the appointments. So for the dementia for my boss, there was this like a drug, even though it's not really my place, but I am in charge of it. It's called oxcarbazepine, but I was told he has to get it from like a a therapist, not a like a psychiatrist. Do you recommend psychiatry for people with Parkinson's?
I
Push for
recommend
that?
specialist, but I think that has to come through the primary care physician first. Usually it's a referral process
Okay.
because of this age, either the geriatrician, which is a medical doctor who specializes in people 65 and over. And that geriatrician possibly could do all the things, the evaluation for medication, the prescription follow up. So you might want to start there, and they may be able to refer this person to any other specialties after that. So I would try to get them with a specialist who works with people 65 and over, preferably with Parkinson's. But if you can't get someone that's just a specialist, because sometimes there's long wait lists, start with the geriatrician.
Okay. Because we usually see his neurologist or his regular, but okay.
Yeah, neurology, yeah, but because that's a specialist as well, they might see them quarterly, or some longer term after that, but they're not going to see the patient every month or every 3 months. So, ongoing care, you want to build a relationship with someone who knows this person, and that would be the geriatrician.
Okay. I do
Yeah,
reach out to her often. We see her every 4 months or so, but a
yeah,
geriatrician? Okay.
yeah, because it sounds like you need someone to see them more frequently. So
Yeah.
they can evaluate for, other cognitive signs and symptoms and also medication referrals,
Okay.
as opposed to a psychiatrist. Psychiatrists are general practitioners in medicine, but they're not going to see them regularly, and they're not going to do talk therapy with them as someone who might sit with them a little bit longer in a geriatrician's office.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is like the first time I'm hearing this. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Of course, you're
And
welcome.
congratulations on being a newlywed. And again, April, thank you so much for doing
Thank
this.
you.
Like, wow.
Thank you. I
Thank
know we got
you.
time for one more. That's Emma, and then we got to all sign off. Thank you, Cookie. Is Emma
Thanks
still
so
there?
much. I'm still here. Yeah.
Okay.
I myself am on 14%. So bear with me.
Sure.
But I am not gonna try to like outline the entire
Just give us
dynamic
the clip
of,
notes.
yeah. So one of the things that I'm currently like navigating is just like loss. Both my parents are still around, but I
Sorry.
think like throughout the years, I have had issues with loss
Okay.
of their volition, navigating that and learning how to communicate with them through it. Um, Loss of maybe acknowledgement. Sometimes when the aides come, a lot of them do the job for various reasons.
Okay.
So, some of them will come, they are looking to adopt new parents for themselves and they really just want to step in and take over. And
Okay.
I can understand where that's coming from. My background is psychology.
Okay.
So I try to have like rational conversations with people at times. Like I'm not someone who sugarcoats things. And I
Okay.
know a lot of the times, like I've been told like it does help to sweeten the tone a little bit and try to like be warm, but I'm not that kind of person. I'm autistic myself, so I find it very difficult to perform, especially when I'm sharing very sensitive information. I have been working on being delicate, so that's been um, something that helps me a lot.
Okay.
Um,
Tell
and
me your question.
my question is that when you're navigating caregiving from the perspective of trauma, meaning that the people you're caring for have at some point in time been a part of your trauma,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to do it, obviously, like I have no regrets about how I caregive. Like I do it from a very giving, loving perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I never really wanted anything or cared for um, the reward of it. I just did it because it was the right thing to do. And I
Yeah.
hate to see people suffer, but I've
Okay.
lost so much. I've lost so many really, really good jobs that I've worked so hard. I've lost partner, like over a decade of partnership.
Mm-hmm.
I've lost friends. I've lost my self confidence, my health. I've had brain surgery and spine surgery. I'm just so exhausted. How do you navigate when it comes to people starting to view you as unfit to care for your loved ones? Because
Okay.
they don't understand your capacity. Yes, you are tired. Yes, you're going through all this stuff, but the invalidation of, I don't even have the word. Like sometimes I'll go to like an interview to get better understanding of a particular resource or a facility of care or something, and
Mm-hmm.
people will look at me like, "Oh my God, like, are you sure you're the right fit?" You
Mm-hmm.
know, like, is this safe? Are you a safe person for your parents? Or, I had a nurse who finally reconciled home care visits where a nurse was coming in every month referring to needed resources and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be quite frank. I think part of the issue with that particular provider was that she was a white woman, culturally out of touch.
Mm-hmm.
We're very African and traditional household. I'm
Mm-hmm.
well educated for my age and also for what I know in the healthcare system, provided I'm not a provider. I've done well to educate myself in a few completely different fields than what I um, pursue professionally. And it wasn't comfortable for her to come into a home where, she was held accountable. And so that experience was just completely, um,
So let
it
me jump
wasn't a
in,
good fit.
Emma.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me jump in because I know you said you had 14%. So I'm going to say this
Mhm.
as succinctly as I can before we sign off, and respectfully, just due to time. So there's a lot of complicated feelings that I'm hearing in there. And this is where I go back to, if there's someone outside of the circle of support that you currently have that you could speak to, or even within that support group, I would lean on them a little bit for a short time. And if possible, connect with a mental health provider or even an emotions coach, because what I'm hearing is a lot of different things. And part of it might just be in terms of how you see yourself as a COO. There are going to be people who judge no matter what the situation looks like, and they're there for a short amount of time. You're in it every day. So they only get a glimpse of what's actually happening. They may be concerned for some legitimate reasons. They may be projecting things, and that might be what you're feeling. I think this would be a suitable question to also process, which is why I'm saying if you can talk with someone in your circle of support that might be a little bit further away from the situation, or